Hi
Hi
everyone.
everyone. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Hi
Sorry for the echo. Hi everyone.
everyone. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Hi
Can you talk? Oh yeah, there's the echo. Bring us down. Bring us down.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Raghu, can you speak something?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. There's still echo, but the resound is a little less, right?
There is also echo when you are speaking.
You can hear the echo?
Yeah.
Bring us down. All right, Raghu, I think we can start the session.
Yep. Good to go. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending, of course, on where you are in the world. It is a real honor to get the opportunity to speak here today. And I really hope that by the time we're done with this session, everybody who's listening can take back something of value to them. So I will just give you a quick overview of what the next 30 to 45 minutes are going to look like, and then we'll get into it. So we'll start with a quick introduction. I will tell you who I am and what I do. I will tell you about my company Mobcast, what we do, and then we will get into today's topic. We will discuss the topic in as much detail as possible. We will understand the what, the why, the implications it has, the challenges that have come with it, and what businesses can do to come out on top. Towards the end of the session, we have blocked about 15 minutes for a Q&A, during which time I'll be more than happy to take any questions that you all might have. So with that out of the way, let's jump right in. First things first, my name is Raghav Sehgal. I am here on behalf of Mobcast. Mobcast is a decade-old organization, and we have been pioneers in the HR tech space in India. Over the last 10 years, we've had the good fortune of working with several large enterprises, both in India as well as overseas. Our clients are a diverse set. We have served clients right from banking to logistics to manufacturing, you name it, and we've served them. We have over 1 million business users on our platform, and ours is one of the highest rated apps in HR tech anywhere in the world. So that's enough for background. Without much ado, let's get right into today's topic. Can we have the next slide, please? Right. So, as the saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Having said that, I suspect here I'm going to have to do a little bit of explaining. So, the visual that you see on screen is from one of the most splendid animal migrations that takes place every year in Kenya. What I will have to explain is what is this doing in the middle of a serious professional deep tech conference. Well, today's topic, there is a direct parallel between today's topic and this visual. What you see on screen is similar to what we have seen over the last 2 years across companies globally. Employees have voluntarily quit their jobs for greener pastures. Now, this is a stunning, significant, unprecedented phenomenon. And it really is fascinating when you think about it that all of this is happening in the middle of a global pandemic. 2 years ago, if you rewind the clock and you think back to what people were saying before the pandemic hit, or rather just when the pandemic had hit, everybody, the common man, world leaders, thought leaders, economists, everyone was worried about job losses that the recession coming with the pandemic might bring. And while that has happened, the phenomenon that has actually emerged as the dominant phenomenon and which has captured everybody's attention is today's topic, and it is popularly called the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation is fascinating. Lots and lots of people in times of high uncertainty have quit their jobs voluntarily, and perhaps this would be better understood with the help of a few numbers. So let's get to that. Can we have the next slide, please? So, as many as 41% of global private sector employees have quit their jobs in the last couple of years. A related number is one in every three people plans to quit their job in 2022. Now, if you are a business leader, these numbers are bound to be worrying. I mean, simply put, this is just not sustainable. Another equally worrying number is that in the US, 47.5 million people quit their jobs last year, which is about 25% of their entire workforce. In the Indian context, the top five IT companies in India recruited about 200,000 new people last year. And at the end of the year, their total headcount hadn't grown. So the estimated annual attrition for these top five Indian IT companies is about 20%. Now, take a minute to just internalize these numbers and think about the sort of business impact these numbers have. if you were leading a team of 100 in the US last year, chances are that only 75 of them at best would have survived for the start of this year. In the midst of all of this uncertainty, when attrition is at these levels, as business leaders, our job is to plan for the mid to long term. And that is simply impossible to do with these levels of attrition. In fact, the viability of the business itself might be in question in the mid to long term if this continues. So it becomes incredibly important as business leaders to understand and address these challenges. And the first step to actually solving this problem and retaining talent is to understand why they're leaving. Can we have the next slide, please? So, as is to be expected, the answer to why employees are leaving is quite nuanced, right? And it can even vary depending upon your specific context. But having said that, there are some broad common themes that can be identified. One of the key drivers for the great resignation is a broad shift in priorities. Now, this refers to basically two different things, or there are two factors which is causing this change in priorities that we see. The first one is that the last 2 years, everybody's experience has been vastly different from how we were used to spending our time before the pandemic. We have cut down on commute. We have even been able to save a little bit of money, and we have had the opportunity to really step back and evaluate our work much more comprehensively. The other key driver for this change in priorities is the natural transformation that we see generation on generation. So if you think back 2, 3 generations ago, it was pretty commonplace for somebody to hold just one or two jobs throughout their entire career, because those generations valued job security and loyalty above anything else. Then that priority shifted to basic necessities and material possessions. The last generation that entered the workforce, millennials, they exaggerated this trend and went from basic necessities and material possessions to placing a high emphasis on quality of life. Right? They worked because they wanted to live the good life. They wanted to travel and have good meals, etc. Now, the current generation which is entering the workforce, which is Gen Z, their priorities, according to what the data suggests, are totally different. They place the highest emphasis on job satisfaction, and that job satisfaction for them is derived from a synergy between their own personal values and those of their employers. With all of this shift in priorities, what this has led to is a significant employee employer disconnect. Simply put, most employers just don't get it. Today, employees want inherently different things, and employers are still lagging in their understanding of how employees think about this. Data suggests that today employees place a much higher emphasis on all the cultural and relational factors which form the dynamic of their relationship with their employer, whereas most employers still look at it through a transactional lens. So what one of the things that results in, for example, is that when somebody quits, employers think that they can solve the problem by throwing money at it, but that actually makes the problem worse because that emphasizes the transactional nature of that relationship, which is exactly what employees don't want. The third factor, and one which in my opinion is quite underappreciated, is the rise of the gig economy. Now, according to most estimates, this economy is about $1 trillion globally, and it is a relatively recent phenomenon that has especially blown up during the last couple of years. It's important as business leaders and as employers to understand what this economy represents. The gig economy presents talent with an opportunity to choose what they work on, who they work with, and how they work, and still make decent money doing it. In a nutshell, it gives them the opportunity to be their own boss. And that is a scary proposition for employers looking to retain talent. And what this has basically resulted in is that companies today are not just competing with other companies for the talent, they are also competing with this alternative marketplace, which has come onto the scene and blown up in a big way. Well, the last key driver, and perhaps the most important key piece, is toxic work culture. Contrary to popular belief, I mean, the common perception is that pay might be the most important thing, but culture is actually the number one reason why people quit. And in fact, if you look at a lot of studies, culture is 10 times better at predicting employee turnover than pay is. So these are the key drivers which are sort of causing the great resignation, and this is what is causing employees to leave and explore something else, right? But with these causes, it's also important to understand exactly the effect and how the dynamic between employees and employers is changing. Can we have the next slide, please? Right, so three simple words, right? The power shift. So this, over the last couple of years, the events that we have seen, this is a very fundamental, irreversible, and unprecedented power shift which has occurred, where power has moved from employers to employees. So, traditionally, employees were expected to stay in line and not upset the apple cart just because employers were paying their wages. And well, employees actually did that. But today, employees themselves realize the that the power is with them, that they have ample opportunity to make a living, and they don't really have to put up with this anymore. So they have demands of their own, right? Employees today are craving flexibility, they are craving autonomy, they are craving freedom to work the way that they want to work. And if you look at it, all of these are reasonable demands on the surface. And because of this shift in the power dynamic, employers have no real option but to start listening and start accommodating. One way in which this power shift has manifested itself is the rise of remote work. Now I know that remote work started or came into the mainstream out of necessity. It was at a time when we were in crisis and work had to continue, so people switched to working remotely. But the continued existence and embrace of remote work suggests that employers have to now start listening to employees, because remote work is something that employees want. If you look at the best companies with the highest employee experience scores and the lowest attrition, in other words, companies that are doing well to guard against phenomenons like the great resignation, these are the companies where they have listened to their employees and they have facilitated the freedom and the flexibility that their employees crave. So remote work, simply put, remote work is just one way in which, and the continued existence of remote work is one way in which this power shift has manifested. Can we have the next slide, please? So we'll just take a pause for a poll and we'll get back to it once we have the results.
Hey, Raghav, I'm back.
Hi, Sandy.
I hope everything is working well now, though my camera doesn't seem to be working.
I can see you.
Oh, you can? I can't see myself, but it's okay. That's
Mhm.
fine. Let's wait for the poll results to come in.
Yep.
Uh, okay, brilliant. And you obviously touched over this point. The question was, which of these do you think can shield your organization from the great resignation?
Mhm.
Participative culture, 4-day work week, better pay, none of the above. You nailed it, Raghav, in the first 10 minutes. You mentioned about the participative culture of me, and possibly help, the culture helping people deal with the great resignation. So that's brilliant, and the audience, of course, concurs from with your thought process also.
Okay, so have the results come in? Because I'm particularly interested to know what this audience thinks.
Yeah. So the audience is, so we've got some votes. Audience is saying participative culture 65%,
Okay. Well, that's not
and
surprising.
yeah, it's not surprising, but I still felt that in these days 4 day work week has been spoken quite a lot. So I thought
Yeah.
that will get a lot more votes,
Mm-hmm.
but only 16%. In fact, the numbers have gone up for participative culture now to 68%.
Mm-hmm.
The 4 day work week is 16%.
Okay.
So yeah, better pay 5%. By the way, you mentioned people thinking that pay can help in Great Resignation, but you seem to
So,
have
so
given the right answer.
there was
Yeah,
actually a study by Glassdoor where they analyzed why people are quitting jobs, and pay was actually ranked 16 on that. So there were 15 other factors which were above pay, and
right.
this is pretty counterintuitive when you first come across it, but then when you
Yeah,
think through it, it kind of makes sense.
yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Let's go ahead, Raghav.
Sure. So, as I was just mentioning on the previous slide, as I just touched on, employees crave autonomy, they crave flexibility, and they crave freedom, right? And businesses really have no choice but to facilitate employees and give them what they want as long as it is within reason. Now, what we have seen over the last couple of years is that remote work works. It We can think of it, we can look at the last couple of years, and we can think of it as a small experiment that we ran, and through that experiment we were able to see that possibilities exist. What is exceptional and perhaps a little surprising is that today, when the pandemic is finally easing, the companies which are not losing employees and the companies which are doing relatively better, as I mentioned, are those which are listening actively to their employees and going out of the way to facilitate what these employees want. And one of the main things that they want, which I think represents a fundamental shift in how we work. In fact, I think this shift is so profound that it might be one of the most meaningful changes we have gone through in the way we work since ever since the computer revolution. So what employees want today, and they make no you can't make any two ways about it. What employees want today is the option or the choice to work remotely if that's what they desire. Now, granted, there are those who want to be fully remote, there are those who want a hybrid model, and within that hybrid model, some people want a greater degree of in person interaction, some people want it every once in a while, but there is barely anybody who wants to go back to the rigid, flexible, cumbersome schedule of commute and the same working hours every single day. One interesting data point here, which I think is very pertinent, is that 33% of employees, which is one in every three employees, said that they would definitely quit their jobs if remote working stopped being an option. So that shows you how critical remote work has become, and how businesses really have no choice but to reimagine how work gets done and reorient their systems in order to facilitate it. Can we move to the next slide, please? Right. So you are a business leader. You understand that fully remote or partly remote, but some form of remote is the future. You understand that the current levels of attrition are not sustainable. Therefore, you have to lean into what employees want. But with all that said, you still have to make sure that it makes business sense. Your responsibility is making sure that the business works, right, as a leader. So you it even though on the surface it might make business sense, and we have seen the model work for 2 years, I don't think that remote work is a flawless model yet. Keep in mind that we have only been working remotely for the last 2 years. Before that, all of our careers, everybody more or less has not experienced remote work. So this is bound to happen. There are bound to be imperfections. Another pertinent thing to note here is that the last 2 years were times of crisis. So people had a natural tendency to pull together and get work done. But if remote work continues and we move past the crisis, then some of these problems are going to come more and more to the surface. So going forward, the idea is that businesses have to embrace remote work if they want to retain talent. How do they? Because ultimately these leaders have the responsibility of making sure that not only do they embrace remote work, but they also make remote work. So how do they overcome the challenges, the inherent problems, or the inherent sort of hurdles that they have to overcome with remote work? How do they make sure that they can do that in the long run and carry out their work in an effective way? And this is where technology comes into the picture. Now, this is a problem we have been exploring very deeply over the last couple of years at Mobcast, and we have actually moved to the next slide already. So I will start with this slide. So as I was just saying, this is a problem we've been exploring very deeply over the last couple of years at Mobcast, and all of that has culminated in ASAP. Now, ASAP is a new product that we have designed from the ground up for remote or hybrid teams exclusively, right? The underlying idea behind ASAP is that we want to facilitate teams to work together from anywhere in their own way. Now, if you look at the three parts of that, it's easier said than done. You want to give people flexibility, you want to give people a personalized experience, but you also want to facilitate collaboration, and you also have to keep an eye on productivity. So these are the challenges with remote work. This is what we are trying to achieve through ASAP. It is quite an early product, but our vision with ASAP is to become the virtual HQ of remote teams. And in doing so, we want to replicate all of the good that comes with sharing a physical space. So peer-to-peer learning, for example, or forming meaningful relationships with your coworkers, or getting work done and collaborating super easily because it's just that easy to do when you're sitting across from somebody. We want to replicate all of this in a virtual environment, and at the same time do away with the cumbersome routine of going to a physical space and following rigid policies every day. So in order to achieve all of this, in order to lay the foundation on top of which employees can build organizations can build their own operating systems, we need to leverage technology in a big way at every step. And that is what ASAP's future looks like. So I will take you through in the next 3 or 4 slides what ASAP looks like today, what ASAP makes possible for you today, and how you can leverage ASAP immediately to start transitioning to a, or start, maybe if you can't transition immediately, start considering and planning for a permanent remote or hybrid model. Can we have the next slide, please? Right. So we have three simple goals with ASAP. One, we want to increase productivity. So we want to have a direct impact on the bottom line. Two, we want to lower attrition, which is again a direct business impact and totally measurable. And the third thing that we want to achieve with ASAP, which is equally, if not more important, given everything we've just discussed, is that we want to increase and meaningfully increase employee experience scores. So these are the three pieces of the puzzle. We call it productivity, collaboration, and community. So the first thing we'll be discussing here today is with respect to ASAP is smart nudges. Now, smart nudges is a whole bunch of things, but in a nutshell, what it allows the user to do is that if your team is using ASAP and you are one of the members of the team, smart nudges right at the top of your screen every morning, in fact, throughout the day, gives you one click actions that you can take. And this is all automated based on the work you need to get done, the messages you need to respond to, the tasks that you need to look into or you haven't started, right? Maybe some people that you need to catch up with. So all we look at all of this information, we take a macro view of everything that's going on in the organization, and we give each employee a focus for the day. Now here we leverage technology in a big way, because in order to do this successfully, we have to make sure that we are continuously prioritizing urgent and important tasks only. We have to highlight what is meaningful. And if you think about it in the long run, this is really trying to solve a very deep or automate a very deep and structural problem or part of work, which is resource allocation and resource utilization. And if I can say so, over the years, that is the kind of business impact we want to drive through smart nudges alone, where this gives you what you need to focus on in order to get the maximum out of yourself, out of the entire team, and consequently out of the entire organization. So that's smart nudges. It's going to evolve. One thing I'll point out here is, it might be visible to you, is a small coffee icon on top of smart nudges. So this is something that we will cover in a later slide, but just make note of it, and I will come back to refer to this. Can we go to the next slide, please? So one of the other fundamental modules within ASAP is task management. Now, it's all well and good trying to say that we want to make an impact on culture and we want to foster community, but ultimately we are trying to create a virtual HQ, and we have to get work done. So task management is actually something we have married very closely on ASAP with chat. So both of these things are seamless. And the whole idea here is that both your individual tasks as well as tasks that you might be performing with other people from the same team or even cross team, you can create these tasks, you can assign these tasks, you can delegate these tasks, you can modify them, you can track them. So I'll just touch a little bit more on the tracking aspect. So what does it mean to track the progress of a task, and how does this tie into the whole smart nudges piece? Let's say you create a task today that you need to deliver a certain output the end of next week, right? We at the back end are trying to understand, like, now you may or may not put in the milestones for that output. You may not put in the stakeholders for that task. Although we give you the option to do that, it's possible that you perhaps don't do that, or you miss it, or you don't put in the right things, right? Maybe there is a better way to get this task done. So at the back end, we are looking at these tasks that are happening across the organization, and something I mentioned earlier, which is resource utilization. We are trying to optimize for that at company level. From a user's perspective, this is a simple module that just helps you stay on top of tasks. It helps you go back to refer to a task you might have completed 2 months ago and look at the contextual record of that task. It helps you from a user's perspective to create teams on the fly. I might be, let's say I have a task where I need to do a certain user research on a certain topic, right? Now that might be cross functional. I might have somebody from design, somebody from engineering, somebody from marketing, and somebody from sales to talk to the customer or customer success. So task management from a user's perspective allows you to do that on the fly. It allows you to track these tasks, maintain a record of these tasks, and go back to refer to it at any time. And from a company perspective, ultimately this also goes towards solving the resource utilization piece. And we are constantly trying to figure out, is this the best way to get the task done? Can we go to the next slide, please? So chat. Now this is pretty much the foundational layer of ASAP. On the surface, it may not look like there is too much new about this, because there are a lot of chat apps, But ASAP chat is inherently different, right? ASAP chat is built with an intelligence layer on top. So everything that ASAP is able to do, from smart nudges to offering you, to prompting you to take certain actions, right, to reminding you about certain things you might need to get done, even to connecting you to your co-workers for casual conversations which may not even be about work. All of this comes through information which is synthesized using this intelligence layer which is inbuilt into the chat platform. Now be rest assured that this is entirely anonymized. So it's not somebody at the back end reading your messages. But what it allows at a company level is, again, going back to the same goals of creating a virtual space where you can get the most out of your team and you can get work done in the best way possible. So when I say this chat is different from a user's perspective, also it's different because there are nice little features like you can set do not disturb, and you can set your own communication preferences, you can schedule messages and all of that, just nice little tidbits. But really the innovation here is the intelligence layer which is integrated with the chat, which is offering organizational insights on a meta level. Can we move to the next slide, please? So this is the last piece of the puzzle for ASAP. And this is what we are doing to tackle the community or the culture piece. As I said earlier, this is equally important as productivity or as getting work done. And this is really the solution to fighting something like the Great Resignation. One of the main problems with remote work, as reported by Forbes, and as many of you might have experienced yourself, is that there is inherently remote work is inherently lonely, and you feel a sense of isolation. When you're working remotely, work happens in silos, right? You are interacting with the 4 or 5 or 10 people that you are working with directly, but you don't really have a sense of what is going on in the larger organization. So we are solving for that through Town Hall. The idea behind Town Hall is that we want interaction to happen the same way that it would happen in a physical space, more or less the same way. And we will enhance it where we can because we have the benefit of technology. So one of the foundational principles of Town Hall is that we want to encourage transparency. We want to, wherever possible, break these silos and let people know what else exists outside their little bubble within the same organization. So we want people to know what others are up to. We want people to know who else is there in the organization and what their interests are, right? We want people to know what kind of projects are going on, even on a to do level, for example, again, where possible. So this is all customizable depending on what you want to be confidential and what you can share with whom. So so we do it according to that. But broadly speaking, we are trying to encourage transparency, and we are trying to make remote workers feel like they are connected to something bigger than themselves or just their small team. The other thing with Town Hall, which is again trying to solve the same problem, is interest based communities. Now, again, with remote work, loneliness and isolation being top of mind, we have to figure out a way to connect people to like minded peers. And traditionally, in a physical office setup, that would maybe happen through serendipity or like maybe water cooler conversations or something like that. But we are trying to translate that and take it digital. So you have the opportunity to form communities based on your interests. These communities will be recommended to you, to new joinees, to people who are already part of the team. And within these communities there are prompts, there are you have the opportunity to plan events, right? You have the opportunity to create discussions. So let's say you have a community for current affairs and an election is going on, so you can expect that on that day that community will be especially active. So ultimately we want to create a space, and we want to create tools where employees are encouraged to communicate and encouraged to participate with the wider organization. Remember, I said I will take you back to the coffee icon. So maybe we don't need to go all the way back slides wise, but I will just tell you how that plays into this piece. So that coffee icon is essentially a one-click break. So anytime during the day you want to take a break, you tap on that, and you can think of it as the same as walking into a canteen in a physical space or a cafeteria in a physical office space. When you walk into a cafeteria, you see a bunch of tables. Some table might have 4 people, some table might have 2 people, some table might be empty, and it is up to you where you want to sit, what you want to engage with, and you generally choose based on your interests, right? So this is something similar. Whenever you want to take a break, ASAP gives you the opportunity to take a break with your co-workers, and not just awkward video conversations, which I don't think anybody would be interested anyway. We actually help you break the ice. We give you things to do on that break. So that is similar, going back to the cafeteria example, that is similar to having board games in the cafeteria, where if 4 people are sitting on a table playing Monopoly, you can go and join them. So again, this the coffee icon that you saw on the smart nudges, as well as this town hall, all of this comes together trying to solve for the culture piece. And with these four foundations, we have started to create what we want to evolve into the foundation for operating systems that organizations can create for themselves. So the virtual HQ for remote and distributed teams, now and in the future. Can we have the next slide, please? So we will stop here again for a poll. And
Yes, let's do the poll again. And Raghav, it has been fascinating to hear you. Of course, I love the coffee idea, and I love to do a virtual coffee. The board games idea in the canteens is also amazing. I was wondering, as you were speaking about it, I said, all my team members love to play table tennis. Maybe we'll do a virtual table tennis one day when we're working from home
yep,
through your ASAP platform. But
someday
anyway,
soon.
let's look at this. Which of these modules do you think is best suited to your team going forward? Absolutely no surprises. The options were hybrid, work from office, fully remote. Hybrid is the answer. 100%, which is
100%.
100% is
Wow.
hybrid.
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is of course accepted. Yeah, yeah. So Raghav, it's been fascinating, and I'm only conscious of the time, and I'm conscious of a lot of questions that we've got. Maybe we can pick up 2-3 questions, and you could
Absolutely.
quickly
Absolutely. I'm
answer
sorry if I
those.
overran.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it is a good conversation. It is a good discussion.
Yeah.
I'm only conscious of answering. We may not be able to ask all the questions to you today, but maybe we'll try and pick up the most important ones. There's a question which talks about sales enablement and sales enhancement technologies,
Mhm.
and does that work together? Can ASAP be used in becoming not only an enablement platform but also an enhancement platform for sales?
So the way I would answer this is that ASAP at the moment is trying to create the foundation. It's trying to create the base upon which these applications can be built. So in a technology sense, you can think of it as more of a platform play. So that so the parallel you can perhaps draw, although it's not a good parallel to draw, but might help the might help the audience to understand, is Slack with plugins, right? So the plugins make Slack do a lot more than what Slack was originally designed to do. And we have sort of a similar vision with ASAP. So as the ecosystem matures, as the product matures, I am sure that something like sales and enhancement and sales enablement will everything will come into play. But right now we're trying to solve more structural, more foundational problems that exist.
Got it. Got it. And of course, I've known Mobcast, and I've known your team is fabulous team, millions of users on your platform today, across multiple use cases that you are addressing. Uh, I know the answer to this question, but I'll still ask you the question. How can we include third party staff on this platform? So it is not only the in-house team, the employees, but also the third parties, right? Now,
Right.
if I go back to Slack, and a lot of organizations use Slack. Now,
Mhm.
Slack is, you can't extend it to third parties very easily. It takes a lot of, it's
Yep.
costly. It requires
Yep.
plugins, and it requires a whole lot of things to do.
Mhm.
How do you do it in your case?
So if you think back to something I said while I was giving the talk, and I think I mentioned it when I was talking about task management, everything so sort of the foundational architecture of ASAP is based around mirroring your org chart and assigning roles and powers to people, right? And similar to a guest walking into your office, you can easily, with a visitor pass for example, you can easily extend that to ASAP, extend that metaphor to ASAP, and have different kinds of third parties coming in for different applications even. So you might want to invite a third party in and give them access to just one particular channel or just one particular chat group, right? Or you might want to invite a third party in so that they can work with you on some task that three or four of your team members are engaged in. So depending on the application, we have the flexibility and the customizability to have these third parties come in and also assign them permissions and roles so that they have access, but that access is also limited.
Got it. Got it. Last couple of questions before we wind this up. Could you elaborate upon ease of adoption by your end user community? Perhaps share a relevant example.
So as I said, ASAP is still what I would call a relatively early product. So I mean, of course, there are challenges, and we are figuring out challenges and answers every day, right? We're learning every day. Adoption is one of those challenges because as you know and as I know, I think we can both sort of empathize with the users that there are a whole bunch of tools, especially for work, and nobody really likes to use more than one or two at best, and beyond the point it becomes overkill. So that is a barrier we're trying to cross, but the simple truth of the matter is that people will use the platform if they like using the platform. It solves the purpose for them, and so that is what our focus is on, to solve for the adoption piece.
Yeah, I completely get it. But I know you guys have already solved the problem for your core platform, which is Mobcast. The Mobcast adoption rates are far better than a lot of other platforms that we use. The engagement levels, the tracking mechanisms,
Right.
the way it's very intuitive, the way people use it for multiple reasons, and especially for the deskless employees, right? It's being used quite effectively, and the adoption rates are extremely high.
Absolutely.
Also, because the way you guys do that in terms of assessments, micro learning, the nuggets that you send, the
Yep.
various formats, whether it's the video format or the word formats, it's how to increase the adoption. So I'm sure you would achieve the same levels, if not
Right.
higher, in ASAP as well.
Correct. So everything I've said and all the answers are all to do with ASAP. Mobcast, of course, is a mature product, and as you rightly said, we have fantastic adoption. We've sort of overcome that hurdle long ago.
Right.
And to answer your just to sort of make a final point, there are a bunch of things that go into it. It is not just about making the product intuitive and easy to use. It's also about sort of personalizing the adoption curve as much as possible, giving users prompts to onboard at the right time, helping them through that journey as much as possible. And so there's a lot of factors that play into it. But yes, you're right. We've crossed that hurdle with
Yeah.
Mobcast, and we will
Yeah.
do that
I
with
have a
you.
few questions more, but sorry, Raghav, I can't take those. But it's our commitment to all the audience members that your questions will be answered through an email at a later point in time. So we'll share a detailed email questions, on the answers to the questions at a later point in time. Raghav, it's been a pleasure hosting you today. Sorry for the initial glitch. For
No
some
worries.
reason, the technology did not allow me to speak earlier, but I guess now it is working very well.
Yep.
So it was brilliant to have you on board. Very glad to see how Mobcast is progressing. how new products and platforms are coming up, and how you're using deep tech in increasing employee engagement, and of course catering to the big challenge of great resignation. So
Thank you
thank
so
you very
much.
much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Andy. It was an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear friends, this comes to, this session brings us to the end of day two. It was a phenomenal day. Loved the energy, loved the passion, loved the topics. We started with a panel discussion on treasury and markets, and how volatility is taking over the various people are taking over the challenges in the treasury space. We also looked at the treasury management platform, which is a cloud-based treasury management platform. We looked at a digital debt collection platform using artificial intelligence, and of course, now we looked at how deep tech is catering to the problem of great resignation. Tomorrow we have an amazing set of sessions lined up. So please do not forget to come in tomorrow as well. We start at 2 p.m. GMT, 7:30 p.m. IST. Tomorrow the focus is around cloud and app modernization. We will start with a panel discussion. We have some amazing set of panel members coming in. This is the next 2 days, tomorrow as well as the next day, is going to be in collaboration with Tech UK. The panel will be moderated by the Tech UK members, and tomorrow we will have three CIOs of large and startup organizations coming in and sharing their thoughts with us. We will then have a cloud management platform which democratizes the entire cloud adoption, and also look at how identity is changing in the cloud world. So please do join in for tomorrow as well. In the meantime, I'm sure there is a poll in front of you to give us your feedback with regards to this particular session. We'll just hold on for a minute till the time you're able to answer your questions. Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a lovely evening today. Thank you.